First story, a trip to the holiday. A friend of mine once told a story that happened long ago to her great-grandmother. One holiday, the woman set off to visit her parents, who lived in the neighboring village, taking her 2 children with her. Her husband had wanted to go too, but he felt a bit ill and decided to stay home. The woman harnessed the horse and drove off with the children, leaving her husband in the care of his sister. When they arrived at her parents' house, she had barely set foot on the threshold when her husband came out to meet them and said, "Get ready quickly, we're going back." She was very surprised but didn't dare argue. He was always stern with her, and now his face looked downright fierce. She climbed back into the cart, gathered the children close, and they headed home. The man drove the horse faster and seemed to be in a great hurry. He kept looking back at his wife and kids and kept repeating, "What, have you shut me out?" The woman thought he might be talking strangely because of his illness. The road ran through a cemetery. Even alone, she had never been afraid to pass through it. But now, riding with her husband, a terrible dread wrapped around her. About halfway through the cemetery, the husband suddenly stopped the cart and tried to grab his wife and the children. But some kind of invisible barrier sprang up between them. He was very close, but he couldn't reach them. After several failed attempts, he jumped out of the cart and ran into the depths of the cemetery. The woman could never tell whether he was laughing wildly as he ran or cursing loudly. She had no time to think about it. She lashed the horse hard and it bolted away from that place. When they reached home, the woman, barely able to catch her breath, went inside with the children, and then learned the sad news. Her husband had died almost immediately after she had left. It would have ended very tragically had it not been for the protective charm against dark forces that my friend's great-grandmother always carried with her. Second story, come with me. I was 2 years old. I was playing at friend's house. At the time, they were living with a dying elderly woman. She was bedridden and never got out of bed. We never went into her room. We were afraid. But at one point, I had to go after a ball that had rolled into her room. What happened in that room hasn't stayed in my memory. I only remember fragments. The old woman taking my hand, and then me crawling under the bed to get the ball. I don't remember anything else, only that I didn't cry or scream there. I just stayed in the room for a long time, and then my mom came and took me out. This is from her account. We went home, and the scariest part started that evening, around 9 o'clock. My mom and I were lying on the sofa, facing the wall. Then that same old woman appeared at the head of the sofa, hovering in the air, her legs crossed. You know, the way some people sit. She began pulling my hand toward her, saying, "Don't be afraid. Why are you screaming like that? Come with me." I remember screaming wildly and trying to wrench my hand free from her grip. My mom also remembers that night. According to her, I suddenly began screaming out of nowhere, reached my hand toward the head of the sofa, and started crawling in that direction. Mom grabbed my other hand and began pulling me back. She says she never imagined small children could be so strong. She almost lost her hold on me. I don't know how, but in the end she managed to drag me back onto the sofa. God knows what would have happened if she hadn't grabbed me in time. And that old woman, according to my mom, died a week after that. Third story, a trip for gifts. Believe it or not, I hardly believe what happened myself. It was the pre-New Year rush. I rushed to the mall for gifts, long lines everywhere, a crowd of people. I left the car in the parking lot and ran to the entrance when I suddenly felt someone staring at my back. It gave me goosebumps. I turned around and there she was, a tall, thin girl, feet shoulder-width apart, empty-handed, with long, straight hair, wearing a dress, tights, high-heeled shoes, and an unbuttoned, beautiful fur coat just above the knee. She was breathing quickly, staring without blinking with a predatory cold look from under her brow. I couldn't move. I lost the power of speech, and only came to when a car behind me started honking because I was blocking it. The girl had disappeared. I was in shock. My legs felt like jelly. I staggered to a cafe to catch my breath. In the perfume shop, it happened again. I felt the stare, turned, and she was standing half a meter from me. Extraordinary green eyes like a cat's, and a look like a cornered animal ready to pounce. High cheekbones, lips bitten raw and bleeding. She stared without blinking, jaw clenched. Beautiful. She suddenly turned her head to the right, and I instinctively turned the same way. Suddenly, it felt as if I'd been struck on the head. I came to lying on the floor. A crowd gathered around me. I had lost consciousness. I asked security to check the surveillance footage because my phone had supposedly gone missing. Lord, there was no girl on the video. I was standing in the hall looking at empty space. A cold sweat broke out. My hair stood on end, my mouth went dry. The ground seemed to drop beneath my feet. I decided not to drive and called a taxi. I got out of the elevator, and on the mat near my apartment sat a black cat. I thought I would faint again. I tried to kick it away, but it was much more agile than me, slipped away and darted into the apartment. It boldly ran to the bedroom and jumped onto the dresser. I closed the bedroom door and went to the kitchen to pour myself something stronger. Passing the living room, I noticed that the large wooden mask my ex-girlfriend had brought me as a gift from her vacation was lying on the floor, cracked in two. I sat behind the closed kitchen door, had turned on all the lights in the apartment, and asked a friend to come. When he arrived, I told him about the cat and showed him the mask. I decided not to tell him about what had happened in the shop. We went into the bedroom to chase the brazen animal out, but it wasn't there. The cat had vanished. We searched the entire apartment, absolutely everywhere, as if it had never been. My fear is beyond words. I, a 40-year-old man, went to spend the night at my mother's. I will return to the apartment only with a priest. Fourth story, the Domovoi. I never believed in ghosts, fortune-telling, magic, or witchcraft. But twice in my life I encountered phenomena I couldn't explain. The first time was when I was a student. I studied and lived in another city and would go to my parents for the weekend. Every visit my father would heat the banya, my mother would make a delicious dinner. The house was warm and cozy, and my pet waited for me at home, my cat Charlie. He usually slept at the foot of my bed with me. After the banya and a good dinner, I went to bed, all wrapped in a blanket and starting to drift off. I felt the cat jump onto the bed. He walked around my feet a bit, paced in one spot, started licking himself, and then settled down. I clearly felt his movements, his weight, and heard the rustle in the silence. I was alone in the room. I sat up to pull him closer, and there was no one there. You can't imagine the horror I felt. Sleep vanished like a hand wiping it away, and I screamed. My parents ran in to calm me. After I told them, my mother concluded it was the Domovoi, house spirit, and that it doesn't appear when good news is coming. It was warning the household about something. A month later, at the student clinic during a checkup, they found a shadow on my lung and suspected tuberculosis. My studies had to be put on hold. I took a leave of absence. Then followed a long, difficult course of treatment. In total, I was treated for a year, so the Domovoi really had warned me. How could I not believe? The second time was many years later, more than 10 years after the first incident. By then I was married and had a daughter. I lived in another city and once a month took my daughter to visit the house of my childhood. My daughter was still small then, about 5 years old. One evening my grandmother unfolded the sofa, fluffed pillows and blankets, and put us to bed together. My daughter fell asleep and I read for a while and then went to sleep too. I slept very deeply, although normally I'm a light sleeper. Parents with young children know that kind of sleep where you seem asleep but still hear everything. While sleeping, I heard someone walking, clear footsteps. I opened my eyes and sat up on the sofa. It was dark, silent, deep night. I looked from the room into the hallway and saw a little girl, thin, a bit taller than my daughter, in a white shirt, hair down. She was slowly coming toward me and was silent. I thought, where did a strange child come from in our house at night? I wanted to ask something, but my mouth felt as if it were taped shut. The girl walked on, looking at me. Her eyes were huge like saucers. A terror seized me and I stepped back, braced myself against the inside of the door to our room, and began to say a prayer. I know the whole prayer, but at that moment I could only manage the first line. That was it. From fear and trembling, my teeth were chattering, and, like a wind-up toy, I kept repeating that one line. From the other side, someone began pounding on the door. They pounded with a force clearly not from a child, and I couldn't hold the door with ease. I realized I had to keep that door closed no matter what. If I opened it, something very bad would happen. I woke up in the morning. The door to the room was tightly shut, and my daughter was sleeping. My mother peered in, frightened, and asked why I had been moaning so loudly in the night that they'd woken up. Was it a dream or reality? I told her everything. My mother again thought of the domovoi. A few days later, my daughter suddenly fell very ill. A 40°C fever, convulsions, hallucinations, vomiting. She frightened us all. At night, I saw she was in very bad shape and drove her 50 kilometers to the regional hospital. It turned out to be scarlet fever. They observed her until morning and then sent us home. This time, the domovoi had warned me about my daughter's illness. How can you not believe after that? Fifth story, the mysterious brooch. My boyfriend and I went to my grandmother's village to relax. He went to fish, and I planned to splash around in the river. Our river is deep and full of fish, and there's plenty of room to swim. In the morning, we packed our things and headed to the water. It was a beautiful sunny day. I kept swimming while he caught his fish. After a while, he called, "Olya, look what I caught." I went over, even though I didn't really want to look at the fish, but there wasn't only fish in his nets. He pulled out a small oval brooch. It looked like it was made of silver and was very well preserved. "Look, Olya, the river gave you a present. It knows what a clever, beautiful girl you are," he said. After such a compliment, I couldn't help but take the lovely trinket. In the evening, dressed in a summer dress, I pinned the brooch on. We wandered around the village until night and then hurried home. "Grandma will be worried," I said, and we quickened our pace. The night was clear and very quiet. Our path ran not far from the river. As we passed the bank, a fog seemed to rise from it. We looked at each other in surprise but kept walking. The fog thickened and it became hard to see the road. I got very scared and wanted to move closer to my boyfriend, but it felt as if someone pulled his hand out of mine. I panicked and began to call him, but all I heard was the splash of the water. Then a silhouette began to appear out of the fog in front of me. I felt glad at first, but my joy was premature. It was a girl of about 12. She was wet and reached toward me. When she got close, I saw water dripping from her hair and her dirty, torn clothes, and her eyes were red and streaming real tears. She stepped up, held out her little hands, and said, "Give it to me. Give it to me, please. Give it back." I was terrified, as if horror had soaked me through. Without understanding why, I ran. Anywhere, as far from the river as possible. I only came to myself when I saw the light in my house window. Rushing inside, I found my boyfriend worried and asking where I had disappeared to and how I could leave him. I ran to my grandmother, burst into tears, and told her the story. Grandma thought for a moment, then her eyes fixed on the brooch. "Olya, where did you get that?" she asked. I told her how my boyfriend had found it. Grandma sighed and told a story. Long ago, there lived a poor family in the village. They had a little girl who didn't socialize much with the other children, and perhaps that's why the other kids didn't like her. One day, she went out into the yard and some boys surrounded her and began teasing her. Then they noticed the brooch on her dirty dress, snatched it, and ran toward the river. She chased them, begging them to give the trinket back. One boy accidentally dropped the brooch into the water, and the girl, without thinking, jumped in after it. No one ever saw the little girl again. I couldn't sleep all night thinking about the poor little girl. In the morning, my boyfriend and I went to the river to return the brooch. When he was about to fling it into the water, I stopped him. I took off my sundress, pinned the brooch to it, wrapped the dress around a stone, and threw it into the river. I walked home in my swimsuit and my boyfriend's t-shirt. That night, I had a beautiful dream. The girl, wearing my sundress and the beloved brooch, stood on the shore. She smiled, waved at me, ran up, hugged me, and said, "Olya, thank you.